Good morning, everyone. It is 10 o'clock, so we will go ahead and get started. I'm going to echo what Cindy actually said, and she said, good, colorful day to everyone, which is so fitting as we have Tiffany Hot-Wagner presenting for us today on Rainbow of Behavior, Harnessing ABA Principles with a Colorful Approach. We're super excited. Oh, and we got Amy with her in her office with her elf hat on. Everyone is very festive around here today. It is the week before Christmas. We have dress up days. Amy's combining a couple of them. She's also wearing some colorful socks. I don't know if she can show those also, but she said no. She is ready for Christmas.
I know I wanted to show everybody I scored this like super early in the season, $5 at Target. Like what a steal. Listen,
It's amazing.
I'm sure they're sold out by now, but next year, folks, get there early. That's good.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Amy. Thank you for joining us for a brief introduction of your hat. My name is Danielle Daly. I'm the Professional Development Coordinator here with the Illinois Crisis Prevention Network. I'm just going to go over a couple housekeeping items, and then Tiffany will go ahead and take over. As always, you are muted. Your cameras are disabled. Please use that chat box throughout to ask questions, offer comments, resources, anything like that. You can also use the Q&A. I know Tiffany will be monitoring it throughout as well as myself. So please be sure to use that throughout the presentation. Please visit our website, icpn.org. We do have some upcoming webinars that are on the website for January, and it looks like one in February also. So January 8th, we have our second session of You Need to Calm Down, Mindfulness, a Swift Solution for Tackling Anxiety. That's the second session of that. January 22nd, we have our second session of Compassion, Fatigue, and Burnout. And February 12th, we have our second session of Motivational Interviewing. So please be sure to check those out. You can also access our past recorded webinars through our website, icpn.org, under professional development past webinars. That'll link you to our YouTube channel where you can access all of our past recorded webinars. As always, with our new process that we have implemented, the post-exam will be sent to you via email that you registered with within 24 hours of the webinar. I did send out the handout this morning. Hopefully everyone received that. But that post-exam will come within 24 hours to your email address. It is labeled as a survey. It's a link that you click on. That must be completed in order to receive your continuing education certificate. That is different than the satisfaction survey that pops up at the end of the webinar from Zoom. So please be sure to fill out that post-exam. Like I said, it's labeled as a survey in email. I know it's a little bit confusing. You'll get that within 24 hours. Once you fill that out, it'll automatically generate your continuing education certificate. It will come to the email address that you registered with. Please be sure that you are using your own unique webinar link for today so that you are accounted for attendance purposes. Please do not use anyone else's link. Each link is unique to the person that it was sent to. You are also not allowed to call in and receive a certificate or use someone else or sit in with someone else. Please make sure that you are individually logged in so that we have attendance all ready. Okay, Tiffany is ready to go. She's ahead of the game. Let's let her get started here. Tiffany, take it away.
Thanks, Danielle. Good morning, everyone. Ooh, whoops, I guess I accidentally clicked a slide. Is that what you're talking about, Danielle?
Yes, I figured you were ready to go.
I'm sorry. So good morning. Welcome to Rainbow of Behavior, Harnessing ABA Principles with a Colorful Approach. My name is Tiffany Hot-Wagner, and I'm a board-certified behavior analyst with the Illinois Crisis Prevention Network. We'll get going on our next slide. I clicked it earlier. There we go. So one of my favorite things in the world is rainbows. There's a picture there on the left of my old rainbow office here at ICPN, and then I've done my nails all sorts of times in rainbows and got my Christmas rainbow sweater on and my rainbow earrings today. So when I was creating a training, I really wanted something that was motivating to me. And I'm a big theme person. And so I was like, how can I incorporate rainbows into an ABA training? And I was just thinking, all the colorful colors in the rainbow, each one with different hues, and rainbows come in different shapes and sizes. And then thinking about ABA, you have to be creative, you have to be flexible, we have to individualize services, just like rainbows can be so different, right? So I made a little stretch there, but it'll be really colorful and fun today. So I hope these concepts are exciting and fun and colorful for you guys as well. Terrible at going to the next slide. There we go. All right, so looking at what's going to be covered today, I went through and kind of looked at each color, and then I gave each color a different kind of topic to talk about. And hopefully in looking at each of these colors, each of these topics, we can put it all together and make a colorful approach in how we serve our clients, the people that we support. So our overview of the rainbow today, we've got our little Dorothy and her Toto there. Red will be recognizing and reinforcing positive behaviors. Then we've got orange, observable measures and outcomes. Then we're going to get into yellow, yielding results through effective interventions. Green, growing skills and generalizing learning. Blue, building supportive environments. Indigo, integrating ABA with individual needs. And then violet, visualizing progress and celebrating success. I'm sure you see my little pattern there with B for building, I for indigo, right? Yeah, so let's get started. All right. Red, we're going to look at recognizing and reinforcing positive behaviors. All right, so the first thing we're going to review today is recognizing positive behavior. I'm sure, when you're watching the news, I think it's kind of human nature to have that negativity just built into us. And there's so much negativity out there. I mean, I walk into a group home and they've got the news on in the morning, and I'm always like, ugh, like let's watch cartoons instead. I personally don't watch news just because it is so negative. I'll catch up on like my current events in the car on the radio or something just to like keep up with what's going on, but I can't have like those negative images stuck in my mind all day, or it just brings me down. So something that is really, really important in ABA and how we support our clients is working with that positive aspect, right? And I think we tend to focus on negative behaviors too, just because a lot of times, I mean, it's for good reason, right? So if someone's being physically aggressive, that's a negative behavior we don't really want to see. We don't want to see people be physically aggressive towards staff or family members or peers, right? So we have to kind of focus on the negative. But there's also a way to focus on the positive too, even with those really challenging, tough behaviors. So we really want to build positive adaptive skills, right? So a lot of our documentation too is negative. How can we start having more of those positive conversations? How can we, look for those positive things? Can we start asking staff to document some positive things too? Can we start making, like, let's start the conversation at the dinner table, right? With something positive that happened in everyone's day today. Or let's go around and give everyone here a compliment. Let's talk about each other's strengths. We can do like sticker charts for positive behavior. Everyone in the house has their own sticker chart that's posted. And anytime the staff catches the person doing something good, we put a sticker up there. And, a certain amount of stickers, everyone in the house gets a dance party or goes out bowling. Just trying to find ways to make environments a little bit more positive, trying to highlight that positivity. Because I feel like we get stuck in that like reactive cycle where we're focusing on, you know, telling clients what they can't do, rather than providing them choices of what they can do, or focusing on, hey, I have to document all of these behaviors that happen, so I'm looking for kind of those negative things going on in the environment instead of thinking about the positive as well. And it can really bring down the mood of a house. It can really bring down the mood of the clients, the staff. It can kind of just like set this negative cycle up, right? And we really want to provide more of that positive space for people. So, what can our clients do instead of us telling them no, 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 right? Like I've got those little no signs in the corner, and I feel like I see that a lot of, and I do that too. I mean, I do it with my kid, I do it with clients too, and I always catch myself like, oh, you did it again. Because that's kind of just what we're used to doing. But let's give choices, instead of telling them, no, you can't do this, you can go and watch a show with your peer. You can ask for help if you need it. You can, what are things, because that way, instead of stopping with this no, right, there's nowhere for them to go and they don't maybe understand what their choices are. That way, us giving them those choices can kind of help them move on to the next, behavior or activity in a more appropriate manner, right? Got so much going on my screen right now. Oh, and I thought it would be kind of appropriate to pop in the Grinch there with his little tiny heart that grew 3 sizes just because of the season. And the Grinch is a negative Nancy, right? And by the end of the movie, he ends up being really positive and happy and enjoying Christmas and understanding the real meaning of Christmas. So I thought it would be kind of appropriate there to flip-flop from that negative to that positive. I'm trying to get to the next slide. Okay. So once we've recognized the positive behaviors going on in the environment, or the positive things just in general, the person's strengths, we really want to work on reinforcing that behavior. When we reinforce a behavior, we're going to see more of it in the future. That's just kind of how reinforcement goes, right? If we don't reinforce it, they're probably not going to continue to do it because there's nothing reinforcing happening. So we really want to something that is super simple and easy to do, and you can, practice makes perfect. So something is catching your clients doing something good or appropriate or safe, and reinforcing that. So the other thing with reinforcement is that if there's any delay, it's going to be less effective. In the Cooper book, the ABA Bible, quote unquote, you can see there I've got a quote: a response to reinforcement delay of as little as 1 second, how crazy is that, will be less effective than a reinforcer delivered immediately. So we really want reinforcement to come as soon as possible. And I can't stress that enough. So yeah, and this works for staff and families too, right? So it's not just for clients. This is something we can do with our coworkers. When we see, an awesome thing that somebody's doing, catch them doing it. Tell them that's amazing. You're doing awesome. Just like I'm going to tell all of you right now, I think it's amazing that you're here, that you're looking to continue your education, you're looking for more training, you're looking for more guidance, advice, just education in general. So thank you all for being here and looking to further the way that you provide services to your clients. Good job, guys. And with that said, I wanted to talk about behavior specific praise too. So a lot of us say good job, right? I say good job all the time, and I catch myself and I'm like, oh, but what am I saying good job for, right? I can't stress how important it is that we get specific with our praise. We need to pinpoint which behavior is the one we're reinforcing. So think about this. Susie, some client, right, is displaying yelling sometimes, and they've got this program to reduce that behavior. This is just an example. So you walk into the home, you greet everyone, and you notice that Susie is quietly watching a movie with her peers on the couch, and you want to reinforce that behavior because typically she's yelling. So then you praise her by saying, "Good job, Susie." But as you're saying that, she starts picking her nose. And maybe this is something you don't quite notice because you're saying it as you pass by. So then, because you said good job as she started picking her nose, Susie now thinks that picking her nose is a good thing to do. And then in the future, she does it. And with a lot of our folks, any attention is good attention. So when staff tell her, "Hey, don't pick your nose," she keeps doing it because she's getting attention for it. Um, Sometimes this is how behaviors start, right? We accidentally reinforce a behavior we don't mean to. And thanks, Brittany. I think you're awesome too. Um, And so this is why behavior specific praise is so important. So getting specific, what's the behavior that we're reinforcing, right? So if she's sitting quietly watching a movie with her peers, we want to say, "Hey, I noticed that you're hanging out and using, a quiet inside voice with your peers. That's awesome. How great is that? I really appreciate you being quiet right now so that your peers and you can enjoy this movie." Um and I've got on here, sorry, I'm moving things around. Instead of saying good job, there's different versions of how we can reinforce things verbally. "I like the way you are so smart. When you blank, it makes me so happy. Wow, I can't believe you," whatever the behavior is. So this is just an example. I've done it before in the past with, client teams where I've printed something like this out, or I've printed out examples of different things that they can say myself that I've come up with and made it like fun and colorful. And you hang it in the environment so staff have those examples hanging up so they don't just rely back on, the good job kind of quote unquote. Um, so just something to keep in mind when you're reinforcing behavior. You always want it immediate and you want to kind of vary how you're reinforcing it because too, it comes off more genuine. So if you're telling them good job all the time, they're going to be like, "Yeah, everything's good job." But if you say, "I love when you help your peer, clean their table," or "I love that," or now I'm just saying "I love. It's so helpful when you come over and, you know, help your peer." Um, Different examples, right? So that's going to be more genuine. It's going to come off like you're really paying attention. It's going to come off more sincere and you're going to build a little bit more rapport that way too. All right, so that is the end of red, one aspect of our rainbow. And we're going to move on to orange. So in orange, we're talking about observable measures and outcomes. Something in ABA. So whenever we look at behaviors, we want to identify which behavior we're going to measure. Then we want to define the behavior, right, in observable terms. And then we're going to select an appropriate observation and data recording method. So when we start with identifying those behaviors to be measured, something I've run into is social significance of behaviors. There's definitely behaviors out there where clients might be quote unquote like annoying to staff or their peers. And this is still something we can definitely work on, but if there are more like socially significant behaviors that they're displaying that's affecting, their ability to work or their ability to be out in the community or their ability to, make friends or, something that's really important to them and the team in general, we really want to kind of focus on those. I had someone where they had strange talk. And the strange talk was just like they would kind of talk to themselves and say like kind of strange things. And that was something that was in their behavior plan that they were trying to address. And I was like, well, why are we addressing that? Because if it's something that isn't bothering anyone and it's not really impacting their life, then do we need to change that aspect? Like, is that just part of their personality? Is that, kind of how they stem? Is that going to be uncomfortable for us to remove from their repertoire of, behaviors that they engage in? So just something to kind of think about. And when we're looking at behaviors that we want to target for change, This is something that, you know, ABA has kind of historically gotten into trouble with in the past where I'm sure a lot of you have heard about like targeting eye contact for change. Um, in a lot of individuals with autism, eye contact makes the person feel really uncomfortable, and it's just not a good sensation to them. So when ABA was trying to improve, their eye contact, this was something that was really hard for a lot of clients to, go through that type of programming. And it's not really that important either. Um, so just kind of thinking about, I do annoying stuff, I'm sure, and I do stuff that maybe is inappropriate at times, but it hasn't affected my job. It hasn't affected my relationships with anyone. It hasn't affected my ability to be in public. It's just part of my personality. So we really have to think about that social significance piece and if it's really going to make a difference in the client's life for us to change that behavior or if it's something that we can all live with, right? Kind of working on our acceptance of the people that we serve and understanding that they're humans and everyone has different needs and ways of regulating themselves. And sometimes just because they regulate differently doesn't mean that it's hurting anyone or themselves. And maybe we just need to accept that. So in the Cooper book, I posted a picture so you guys can kind of see it. It's Applied Behavior Analysis, third edition, on what page was it on? 60, I believe. Pictured right here is a little like checklist and how to understand whether or not a behavior is socially significant. So if it is socially significant, if it's impacting the person, if it's something that's important to the person to change and work on, then it'll probably be, higher on the totem pole of behaviors to actually target. But this might be a tool that you use and you're like, oh, maybe this behavior isn't really that important for us to look at. Yeah, Lindsay said everyone has quirks and no one documents each time we are annoying or strange. Thanks, Lindsay. Exactly. Something else that I found was really interesting. Um, and helpful to use was kind of how we prioritize behaviors targeted for change. I've definitely had clients where there's just like a laundry list of behaviors, and some of them you can actually add to each other's like definitions. Like I think one of them was like hitting and physical aggression. And it's like, well, we can put physical aggression in hitting. And then there's less for the staff to have to document and look out for. And it's less confusing for the staff too, because when I think of physical aggression, I would think hitting would be in there. But sometimes it's not kind of cut and dry like that. So just some other things to look at when we are, writing behavior plans or looking at behaviors that we want to identify as, something that's targeted for change for whatever reason. So this is in the Cooper book. Like I said, it's on page 66 if you have access to the third edition Cooper book, or if you're looking to purchase it, it's pretty spendy. But something in there that kind of helps us identify like the most important behaviors that we need to kind of look at and work on. Just another resource for you guys. So then once we can identify the behaviors that we want to put into a behavior plan or whatever we're looking at there, we want to define it. Defining is really, really important, right? We want to ensure as accurate as data collection as possible. So when we're defining behaviors, if we make it ambiguous, then it kind of leaves a lot up to the reader. It leaves a lot up to the staff or the caregiver, whoever is, documenting what the behavior is looking like or when it's happening or how long it's happening. So we really want to make sure that it's specific, it's, objective, clear, and complete, right? So sorry, guys, technical difficulties. So yeah, this means that anyone will be able to observe and measure each behavior. anyone can walk in, read the definition, and be like, oh yeah, that's physical aggression, right? We don't want any question. We don't want it up for question. We really want it to be clear so that anyone can understand what we're talking about, and then complete or measurable, which takes into consideration the components of the behavior, leaving little to the reader's judgment. So when I personally write the definition of behaviors, this is kind of the process that I go through. And I used Rainbow Dash because rainbow. Um, so those observable characteristics, right? I start with any instance or attempt, and sometimes you guys might want to look at attempts and sometimes you might not, use attempts. So it just kind of depends on what you're looking at, but I typically will say any instance or attempt where Rainbow Dash physically harms another pony, right? So we're looking at what the behavior actually is, and it's typically where they're being harmed. Then I'll put in those examples and non-examples, and I'll say this includes, but is not limited to, because sometimes there are outlier behaviors that will still include here. So if I say like hitting with a closed hoof, kicking, biting, throwing objects at others, pushing others, if I forgot pushing others for whatever reason, or pushing others wasn't occurring at the time, and I just said this only includes these behaviors, and then Rainbow Dash started pushing others, staff would be like, well, do I document that? Is that physical aggression? So I'll typically say like it's not quite limited to those things. That way it leaves a little bit up to interpretation, and it isn't like super, super strict. And sometimes if you want to make it super strict, you can also just leave out that limited to or not limited to. And then I'll do those non-examples. This does not include giving high hooves or patting others on the back. And you might even say, like, I've had people where they use those opportunities to start hitting people. So like they'll be patting someone on the back and then all of a sudden they pat them really hard, right? So then you might add like with force, or with like extra force. So you'll end up putting those together. And so then the definition will say physical aggression. Any instance or attempt where Rainbow Dash physically harms another pony. This includes, but is not limited to, hitting with a closed hoof, kicking, biting, and pushing others. This does not include giving high hooves or patting others on the back. So just kind of an outline of how I typically put my definitions of behaviors together so that it's complete, objectable, and measurable. Okay, there we go. All right, so then we are going to talk about that observation and data recording. This kind of really depends on the behavior that we're looking at, right? So you've got like this chart here, and I pulled this from Rogue ABA. They're a really great resource to kind of look at online if you're questioning how you want to measure a behavior. Um, so we really want to meet, staff and family where they're at when we're asking them to data record. Staff are super busy and they're understaffed many times. And same thing with families, sometimes families have other family members that they're trying to take care of. So when we ask them to record data, it can be really difficult to get some accurate data in from folks. So we really want to try to meet them where they're at. Sometimes, if you want to go the extra mile and get like a good baseline so that you have something to measure against when you start implementing a program, you can always look at, how can you kind of get in there and get more data. If you're willing to go that extra mile and kind of get into the environment and do it yourself, that's always something that I can appreciate, but maybe you don't have that time in your schedule either. So I've definitely had it where if I'm looking at more intensive documentation, if I don't want to ask staff or family to do it around the clock, I might ask them, hey, can you do 2 weeks here and then 2 weeks there? And then we'll follow up in a couple weeks and do another 2 weeks of kind of around the clock. Maybe you'll just do 1 week. So just kind of trying to figure out what's going to be easiest for staff, and also kind of looking at getting that more intensive data if you really need it. it's nice for the staff to know that there is like an end to it as well. So momentary time. I'll wait until they're watching to kick the other ponies. Nice, William. Thank you for that example. Um, so if I really want like that intensive documentation, I think it is helpful when the staff are able to see like the light at the end of the tunnel. So giving them that opportunity to like, hey, if you guys can really, really work at it for a week or 2 weeks and get around the clock data, that would be great. And then you can kind of pause from that and just take data as it comes kind of a thing and ease up on that intensiveness. That's been really helpful for me in the past. Something that my supervisor kind of helped get that idea into place. But typically, on average, we want to look at like the frequency recording or duration recording, right? Like the momentary time sampling and things like that are a little bit tougher for staff to understand sometimes. So a lot of agencies like we might do the ABCs, so the antecedent, the behavior, and the consequence, or we might just get like tallies of how often it's happening, but it really depends on the behavior. So this is something where I didn't really get too much into because I feel like it could take probably an hour just to explain all of the different kinds of data recording. But a really great resource again is that Cooper book, Cooper, Heward, and Heron. Applied Behavior Analysis, third edition, or like websites like Rogue ABA. If you go on YouTube, you can just like Google, best types of ABA data recording for like the type of behavior that you're looking at. But typically, if you're looking at the amount of time that somebody is yelling for, or how often someone is getting physically aggressive. So how often would be that frequency, and how long things are happening would be that duration. And you would just kind of have the staff like time it and then write down the amount of time that it, happened. Or they might do like the start time and the stop time and then what it amounted to. All right, so that completes the orange portion of our rainbow. Now we're going to look at yellow, and that's yielding results through effective interventions. I'm so bad at clicking to the next slide. I don't know what's going on here. All right, so these are the steps I've got listed here for just like a general kind of what we look at when we're creating a behavior plan for a person, right? We talked about identifying and defining the behavior. And next, we're going to talk about looking at like the function of a behavior, because then once we find the function of the behavior, we're going to find an equivalent replacement behavior to teach the person. Lastly, we're going to implement the intervention and then maintain the skills. And we'll talk about that later in the rainbow as well. There we go. So there's 4 main functions when we talk about behavior, right? So behavior is communication, and we're doing something to get our needs met typically. So the 4 functions are tangible, escape, sensory, and attention. There's been debate over other functions as well, but these are typically what we're looking at. So for sensory behaviors, these are driven through those internal sensations and doesn't really rely on others for being, reinforced, right? So with my anxiety, I, pick my nails, right? And that's not something that I'm gonna really be reinforced by others or by things. I'm finding it reinforcing to pick at my nails. So this often seems sorry, this is often seen in individuals with autism who engage in like hand flapping, for instance, kind of some of those stimming behaviors or those like self-regulation behaviors. And this is regardless of what's going on in the environment, because it is self-stimulating. Other examples include hair twirling, cracking your knuckles, like I said, like picking at skin or picking at your nails. You'll hear like my son does a lot of humming at home. when he's like playing. And then you've got escape. Yeah, perseverating is a good one. Escape behaviors results in the individual getting out of a task or activity that they don't want to do. I engage in escape behaviors all the time by talking to my coworkers. It's a thing. Often when these behaviors occur, whatever's being asked is removed, increasing the behavior in the future. So whenever we remove the task, then they're going to be like, oh, if I do this thing, I'm going to keep getting the task removed. So I'm just going to keep doing this thing and then I won't have to do the task, right? So if someone is asked to eat their vegetables and instead of eating them, they start screaming and throw them to the floor, this results in them not having to eat the vegetables. In the future, the behavior of screaming and throwing the food on the floor is going to occur more often to avoid eating those vegetables. And then we'll talk about that attention maintained behavior. That's to gain or receive attention from others in the environment. An example could be a child who cries every time their parent leaves the room. This happened last night at bedtime, resulting in the parent returning to the room. And then, so attention functions as a reinforcer there because the child crying results in the parent returning to check on the child. James, that's funny. Your go-to strategy for avoiding eating vegetables works every time. I love it. All right, and then tangible maintained behavior occurs in order to gain access to a preferred item or activity, right? So when the behaviors occurred in the past, the individual may have been reinforced by being given access to the item or activity they wanted. So for example, a child's at the store, they want a new toy. When they're told no, they throw themselves to the ground screaming. I'm sure we've all been at that store when this has happened to a parent. The parent then gets the child the toy. In the future, the behavior will be more likely to occur in order to get the new toy. And that's a really hard one too, because if you reinforce them and then they do it again later and you decide, no, I'm not going to reinforce them that time, their screaming is going to get louder. Putting in more effort to get that same reinforcement. So typically we find the function of behavior by looking at ABC data, or, the data in general. What's the person getting when they do this? What's happening to yield this response from the person, right? We can use indirect assessments like a FAST. So that's going to be your functional analysis screening tool. I'm going to show it on the next slide. It's just like a really simple questionnaire. Or you can use a QABF, which is questions about behavioral function. Or your BCBA might complete like a functional assessment to find the function themselves if you do have a BCBA working with you or a behavior therapist. If you Google FAST or QABF, you can just download a copy of these. They're super easy to complete. You complete one per behavior per staff or family member that you're asking these questions to. Let me just get to the next slide here. There we go. So on the left is your FAST. I don't know how easy it is for you guys to see, but there's just different questions about, it talks about, kind of those function maintained behaviors. Are they doing it when no one's around? Are they doing it when somebody's around? Are they doing it when they're sick? Are they doing it to get something, or do they typically get something? Same thing with the QABF. So like I said, you can kind of find these online. I actually pulled up both of these online, even though I have them saved on my computer, just to see what I could find when I Googled. And they're super easy. They're super quick. And like I said earlier, you do one per behavior. So if you have someone with physical aggression, verbal aggression, elopement, you would do one of these per behavior. So you would do one FAST for physical aggression, one FAST for verbal aggression, one FAST for elopement. And you would do it with like each person that you're interviewing. And then at the bottom, there's like a little scoring tool and it'll tell you, is this mostly maintained by whatever function. And I will say too, when you are doing these, a lot of behaviors are maintained by multiple functions. You'll see that, it's 90% sensory, 60% tangible, so just something to keep in mind too when we're looking at interventions. So then selecting an intervention, I almost always try to target increasing functional communication because behavior is communication, right? So they're using it to get their needs met, and it might not always be appropriate or safe. How can we work with the person to safely express their needs or wants to others? We can use picture cards where the person hands us a card or points to it. We can teach sign. We can use a small whiteboard to write on, etc. When looking at the specific function of the behavior, I identified some typical interventions to implement, such as providing access to preferred items or activities for tangibles. This is one that may also work on increasing their functional communication. So they can request items or activities themselves. So if they're trying to get something, we might want to work on, how can they request those things? For escape, we can, oops, sorry. We might work on having the person give us a break card or providing them with a break. The important thing when doing that is making sure that they return to the activity. Otherwise, they're just completely getting out of the activity. And that's not something we want to teach people either. Like, we all have stuff that we have to do that we don't want to. It's just kind of finding that time and space to regulate yourself and then come back to the activity. Sensory, we might provide sensory items or pursue maybe an OT referral to assist us in addressing a person's sensory needs. If we've got that excessive, like banging their head, or like rubbing their eyes or something that's just really causing like a lot of damage to the, tissue, then we might look at, an OT referral of how can we address these sensory needs, or maybe looking at medical. Is there something medical going on that we need to rule out first? Attention, we might provide proactive, non-contingent attention before the person is getting escalated to try to get attention. Or we might teach the person to request attention in a more appropriate manner. Like, if you want attention, how do you ask for it? If you want to play a game with staff, how do you ask them to play a game? Work with your behavior therapist or team to think of how you can replace the challenging behavior with something functionally equivalent and appropriate, safe. Oh, thanks for posting that, Danielle. All right. So now we're looking at green, growing skills and generalizing learning. It's always a delay when I click on this arrow. All right, so when we're looking at growing skills and generalizing learning, we're going to talk about what's called generalization and maintenance. Generalization is the effect of contingencies and learning spreading to other settings, behaviors, and stimuli. So when you learn a skill, like you learn to say hello to the therapist, right? But you also want to learn to say hello to other people and in other settings, and with other things, going on around you, right? So that's something that we have to teach sometimes. And then you've got maintenance, and that's the ability of the individual to continue to demonstrate that acquired response over time after programming has been faded. So we don't just want them to, learn this adaptive skill while the program is happening. We want them to continue using it after the program has ended. So first, some strategies to grow skills. We've got, oops. So we've identified the adaptive skill that we want to teach the individual. We then need to teach them the skill they need to promote safe choices and adaptive behaviors. One strategy that builds on skills being taught are task analyses, which I've got a picture up there on the right. It's washing hands task analysis. And this is one strategy that kind of breaks down complex skills into smaller teachable steps. So think about like your how-to project you probably had to do in high school. I know I sent out a lot of task analyses for washing hands during COVID. That was something that for some reason we just needed a lot of help with. Another strategy is prompting is prompting. how do we build a skill so that the person needs less prompting from us? We start with prompting that they need. So if they need, full, physical prompting, like how to wash their hands, we're, taking their hands, and I do this with my son too right now. We have to get the soap, we have to turn on, the faucet and put the soap in our hands and scrub our hands together, and I have to do that with him, right? Once he's mastered some of that, I can fade away my physical prompting so that he's doing it on his own, and then eventually he'll be able to just wash his hands on his own. So um learning to kind of fade some of that prompting so that it's less and less restrictive. um then we've got reinforcement. So that's one of the easiest strategies we can use to increase the likelihood of the desired behavior occurring in the future, right? We can also model appropriate behavior we expect of our clients. That's something that I always try to do when I'm in any environment. I try to model any appropriate behavior I can, any safe, desirable behaviors, how to appropriately, interact with peers and things like that. And then lastly, shaping is another way we can assist clients in growing their adaptive skills. When the person does part of the skill or something similar to the skill we're looking for, we can reinforce that until the desired behavior is achieved or displayed. So, if they're washing their hands and we're not like trying to intervene like a ton, if they're, getting their hands kind of wet, we can reinforce that and be like, oh, like that's amazing, like good job washing your hands, and then maybe we'll, use some hand sanitizer just to help out. And the next time, we'll continue modeling, we'll continue prompting, and then, once they're putting soap on, they kind of learn to add those extra things by kind of observing and us practicing and things like that. So just reinforcing those approximations as we learn the skill. Technology, man. Okay. So strategies to generalize skills. There's all sorts of strategies to generalize skills. We want to ensure that the skill is not environment, person, or stimuli specific. Sometimes the person will only display an adaptive behavior with one person or in one environment. So we need to teach the skill across environments with various people and with various items and activities. We can also find ways to work on the skill naturally, such as prompting someone to ask for more while at the dinner table to increase their functional communication. We can use real money in money programs, not that fake stuff we practice with. When I was a Q, we always had like all the fake money for money programs, and it always really bothered me for some reason. And now that I'm in this field, I'm like, oh, well, it's because when we're teaching with that fake stuff and then we give them real money, they're like, what is this? What do I do with that? So just something to think about too when we're, designing programs. Ensure reinforcement in the training setting is not more powerful than that of the natural setting, or we can reinforce the behavior how it would be in the natural setting, such as teaching greetings. You would respond with reinforcement of attention by saying hello or how are you back instead of simply praising them for saying hello. All right. Trying to get, there we go. So strategies to maintain skills. So this is after we're either fading the program or the program has ceased. Some ways to ensure that the adaptive skill that was learned is maintained by the learner is to gradually thin the schedule of reinforcement so that the person's not looking for that reinforcement after the programming has ceased in the natural environment. We can also use intermittent reinforcement to keep reinforcement almost a mystery, like gambling. So when I talk about intermittent reinforcement, we don't reinforce every single time. We'll just randomly kind of reinforce the person. And this is why gambling is so hard to quit if you have a problem with it, because of that intermittent reinforcement. Um, Kind of interesting. We can also probe after the program has ended to see if the behavior is still occurring, kind of like a pop quiz. And then if they're having trouble maintaining the behavior after the program's ended, we can look at either if we need to, reinstate the program with maybe some modifications to increase, chances of maintenance next time around. Or we can do like a quick refresher training for the person to do at that time. We can also help our folks by making, like visual reminders in their environment just to kind of like refer back to, if they're maybe forgetting a step of something that they've learned. Um, and we can always model, right? We can always model, prompt, little reminders. There we go. All right, so that is the end of green. We'll move on to blue, which is building a supportive environment. So this slide is funny because last night I kind of went over the training with my husband, and at the end of it, he said, "Well, now I'm hungry for a rainbow cone." And I was like, "That's what you gathered from me practicing my training with you?" But it did give me the idea to add a picture of rainbow cone to my slide. And he was like, "See, that was helpful because you build your rainbow cone just like you're building a supportive environment." And I was like, "All right," but just a fun, quick story. So in building supportive environments, we really want to understand the people we're serving and their needs as well as their life goals, etc. In doing so, we should be identifying what triggers them, any precursor behaviors they might have, what's reinforcing to them, so that we can create programming that addresses their needs, wants, and works for them. If we don't understand all of those things, then the program's probably not going to work. And this is going to ensure their success ultimately. So what modifications can we make to the physical environment that they live and work in? Can we add some visuals or activities they enjoy? Are there aspects of the environment that's just not working for them that we can remove or we can make better? We can also help create some predictable routines and expectations in the environment so that anxiety levels can remain lower. If I don't know what's going to happen in my day every day, I'm probably going to have a bad day every day, personally. Um, and then we talked about earlier finding replacement behaviors or adaptive skills that allow our folks to gain access to more items or activities in their lives that make them happy. We need to provide social opportunities, especially when we're working on adaptive skills. We got to practice somewhere, right? So those are just a couple ideas. Something that came to mind that was really big for me when I thought about, what does building a supportive environment look like is validation. Validation's really, really big for, I think, everyone, honestly, if you think about it. It's a great way to build rapport, build that supportive environment. It really kind of harnesses that idea that we're all human and we all, have feelings, right? So we don't need to agree with a person's feelings or beliefs to validate them. They're feeling something and that's their truth. So we can, take that cue to be there to provide a safe space when they are feeling those big emotions. And then we can work with them later on to move forward and handle those feelings in a more adaptive manner. Um, so like for example, I just made this up, if Susie again is crying because she doesn't want to brush her teeth, instead of saying, stop crying, it's just brushing your teeth, it's not a big deal, let's just get it over with, right? We can say, hey, I'm sorry you're upset right now. I know brushing your teeth can cause you pain sometimes. How about you take a couple minutes to relax? While I, message the nurse to see when your next dentist appointment is. Maybe I can help you brush your teeth more gently and still get your teeth clean. Um, things like that, just kind of looking at the person and their emotions, as a human being and what maybe they're going through, kind of exercising some empathy, um, instead of just kind of using more of that like judgmental approach, I guess. So it's something we can all practice, and we can practice it with literally everyone we come into contact with. This isn't, just work related. We can do it with everyone. I'm trying to teach my husband how to use validation more. So I mean, use it with your coworkers, use it with, anyone that you see on the street, use it with the cashier at Target. Yeah, it practice makes perfect, and it makes us all better human beings. It shows others that we want to understand what they're going through, even if it doesn't make sense to us. Um, like my 2-year-old hit me in the head with a baseball the other day. And it hurt. It hurt really bad. Like baseballs hurt, man. And I never played sports. So I wouldn't know that a baseball hurts necessarily. And my husband was like, "Oh, that's not bad. I've been hit with a baseball in the head in high school when I was playing ball, and that hurt." And I was like, "Okay, well, I'm the one crying right now with a big gash on my head from a baseball from our 2-year-old." So, in that moment, I probably needed some validation. And it's things like that where like you kind of think of your own experience of like, "Oh, when that happened to me, it wasn't a big deal." But to that person, it is a big deal, and they are feeling those emotions right now. So just kind of thinking about that, crying over spilled milk isn't a big deal to me, but it could be a big deal to my 2-year-old. So recognizing that the person's having feelings. And that's going to build rapport. It's going to make the other person feel seen. It's going to make them feel heard, and it's going to build that supportive environment for them. Be a care bear. Um, so I found this and I thought it was really helpful. I actually had it saved on my computer. Just looking at the way that we speak to clients in general is one of those things that can really, it's a small change, but it can really make a huge impact on building that more supportive environment. This is just a great visual reminder of how we can change the way we talk to people. And again, not just the people we serve, people in general. Reading through each example, you can really just like feel the difference in those words. So instead of be quiet, which I don't think I've ever heard anyone say, um, you can say, "Can you use a softer voice?" Um, I think I've seen even like, "Do you need help?" You can say, "I'm here to help if you need me." That one, I do that all the time with clients, with my child, like with anyone. "Do you need help?" "Hey, I'm here if you need help." Right? Stop crying. It's okay to cry. Do you have any questions? That's another one where I didn't think anything of. You can say like, "What questions do you have?" Right? Like it's okay to have questions. What are your questions? Telling someone you're okay instead of being like, "You're fine, it's okay, you're okay." You can say, "How are you feeling?" It's okay to feel that way. Yeah, just a quick reminder. This is something you can post, in your office, in people's, spaces or whatever, to kind of remind staff. Oops, there we go. So, another great way to build a supportive environment for our folks is using our IDT to its fullest potential. I think Amy just did one on IDTs too. Um, so we have all these people involved typically with our clients' lives. We've got family members, we've got staff, we've got cues, therapists, day staff, school staff. Sometimes there's police involved or like police social workers. These are all really important people, and they all have their own ideas. They all have their own relationship with the client. They all have their own backgrounds, that we can really draw on and use those strengths. So I think it's really important to really collaborate on a regular basis with our IDT. Um, I've typically only seen IDT meetings take place when the person isn't doing so hot. But of course, then again, I work in Illinois Crisis Prevention Network, right? So we're typically seeing those really tough cases come in. But I think it would be really helpful for a lot of our folks to be a little bit more proactive and meet and come together a little bit more often and to invite everyone. I don't see a lot of direct support staff at meetings. And I understand that they, have a schedule that they work. But how can we be more flexible with our schedules so that they're included? Because they're the ones that are, in the trenches. They see what's going on every day, at all hours. So it's really important to include them too. And two, when we're in these meetings, how awesome would it be to also just get together and share the positives and successful strategies with each other too, and not just, what are these terrible things happening, or, well, I don't like it when they're doing this, and do you see that, and how can we change that? Um, let's talk about the positive stuff too, because I think that is also going to change the environment that we're trying to build to be more supportive and being more, positive, and building those positive conversations among staff members as well. Um, It's also really helpful in keeping everyone on the same page and presenting a consistent and cohesive support system for the person. So get together with your team. Lastly, training. If we can provide our staff and families with the knowledge they need to really enhance their skills in supporting folks we serve, we're going to see greater outcomes overall. So many staff come up to me and say they just don't know about a diagnosis or how to handle a challenging behavior or how to use, simple sign language with a deaf client, for example. So if we can buff up our training, we could mitigate some of the power struggles or pitfalls in our own services. And I think we would see a lot more successful outcomes overall. I'm a big proponent of, you guys come to these trainings, and I think it's amazing and wonderful. And I love that you are all here. And kudos for you for taking this hour and a half out of your day to be here. But these are also recorded. So share them with your staff, share them with your families. We have a YouTube page that Danielle uploads these onto, and they're great resources for staff too. And because it's recorded, they can watch it in their own time. So that's kind of cool. But yeah. All right. Indigo, integrating ABA with individual needs. All right. I want everyone to type in their favorite color in the chat box. Holy moly, you guys are quick. What an easy question, right? Okay, so I'm seeing lots of different colors, and I love it because I love rainbows and I love all the colors. But my favorite color is specifically olive green, if you wanted to know. So let's pretend I'm Oprah for a second, and this is not happening, but pretend I'm Oprah, and I just told you all, I'm gonna send you all a car just for participating in your favorite color. That'd be pretty cool, right? Now pretend I'm Oprah, but I just decided that I don't like any of the colors you guys picked, and I'm going to send everyone a car in my favorite color. And so you're all getting cars in olive green. Probably not as cool as the first option, right? I mean, a free car is a free car, but the difference in that customized piece can really make a difference, even if it's a little one to someone. So, like when I go shopping, if they don't have the color of the car I want, I wait till it's available because I'm not spending that much money on a car in that color. But what a luxury that is, too, right? So where I'm going with this is, all right, on the DHS website, it talks about person-centered practice. And this is the type of service we're all supposed to be providing. So is that fair to the person that you're serving not to do something because maybe their peers wouldn't like it, or because that's too much work, or because you don't want to wait for the car to come in their favorite color? So just something to kind of think about, like how can we be more flexible for everyone? If you're not doing a program because everyone in the house would want that program and it's possibly feasible for you to do that program for everyone in the house, even though it would be kind of a lot of work for you, I think you should do it. Just something to think about, like if just because it's annoying or a headache, that's your barrier, right? That's not theirs. So let's not limit our services, right? Let's provide those individualized services to our clients that they deserve. Um, just kind of a soapbox. All right. So in kind of moving forward with like that integrating ABA with individual needs, I had a client that ripped everything and anything. I had a couple clients that did this. One of the teams began to give their client stuff to rip, and they made that stuff into artwork and blankets and dog toys. Pretty cool. Pretty cool idea. Pretty creative. Same behavior, different client. This person began shredding old documents for the agency. Also pretty cool, right? Like these agencies took those challenging behaviors, what we would call challenging behaviors that like, oh, they're ripping again. Like now we have to buy more stuff, right? Like that does suck. It costs money. But they made it into something that was productive and valuable. And they made, a safe space for them to do these challenging behaviors. Um, Brilliant. Just absolutely brilliant. So if we can get creative, if we can find replacement behaviors, or even in this case, it's the same behavior but different outcome, right? We really have to look at the individual and see them for their strengths, which goes right back to being more positive. How can we flip things around, get creative with our programming? Let's look at those socially significant behaviors, goals, the person's strengths, and build on that. Let's work on reducing those barrier behaviors and increasing those adaptive skills. Let's meet the person where they're at. Um, Really getting, collaborative with the team, bouncing ideas off of each other. Kind of empowering everybody to kind of, use what they've got and make it productive, make it, socially acceptable again. So, in talking about like some simple ABA strategies and how we can kind of bounce off of that, the whole purpose of understanding, needs, preferences, values, precursors, etc., is to really build a program that the person will feel motivated by and also build necessary skills the person and their team sees value in learning. We need to engage our clients in the process as well. So when the team talks about implementing a behavior contract, for example, we can't just make a contract and have the person sign it expecting them to adhere to what they agreed to. We need to ask them what they would like to get out of the contract, what they want to be reinforced by, what they find reinforcing, um, kind of meeting them where they're at when we're writing that contract. How do they feel about the program? Sometimes we can help clients monitor their own progress to promote their independence and work with them to figure out what they want to look like, what they want that to look like, and what their goals are. We can further individualize programming by honing in on preferences, etc., when creating things like visuals. As you can see here, I created an example of like a first then board. So first then boards don't have to be boring, right? I love making like fun visuals so that the person wants to use them. When I make the boring ones, those ones typically get ripped up or thrown away or they just don't want to be used. But um, when I made this one, I had my coworker Zach in mind. He loves Star Wars, and it was super simple to make. It didn't take very long. So these are things that we can be a little bit more flexible, a little bit more creative with, um, and have fun with too. Like it doesn't have to be boring or annoying to do. All right. So then getting to Violet, this is our last one. We're going to visualize progress and celebrate success. So anytime I'm learning a new skill, I want to know how I'm doing and celebrate my wins. Um, I want to see the light at the end of the tunnel. I want to know what I'm getting out of this, or what I'll gain as a person by learning this new skill. Um, I have that picture of like the parent teaching the little kid how to ride a bike, right? So you always have, at least when I picture it, I picture like the little kid on the bike and they've got their helmet and elbow pads or whatever, and they're like really like, oh, am I doing it? And the parents behind them kind of holding on and coaching them and saying like, you've got this, keep going, keep pedaling, you're doing great. Um, like that parents typically, they're not in the back silent as they help the kid along, right? Like they're cheering them on the whole time and they're telling them how they're doing the whole way, right? And they're keeping them safe at the same time. So we want to be that parent. We want to be cheering on our clients, keeping them on track the whole way. We're always going to be taking, some baseline data so that we know where we started. And then once we start implementing a behavior, a program, we can continue tracking so that we have that data afterwards. And then we can use all of this data to visualize that progress, and we can we can chart the data. And then something that a lot of people I haven't really seen much of, and I don't even know that I've done it, but sharing these charts with the person, showing them, when you look at a chart, it's pretty easy to see if someone's doing better or worse, or if they're doing the same, right? It's a really simple way to have the person involved in their progress and showing them, this is what you were doing before, or this is what you were doing before, or this is what you're doing before, and this is what you're doing now. And that means good, right? Meeting them where they're at and kind of helping them understand their progress and where they're at in their program. Um, and this is something too. So another thing there, it says one-on-one session to celebrate progress. So when we're showing them those charts, we can, meet with them one-on-one, or we can, you know, quick like, hey, like, let's look at your progress. It doesn't have to be like an hour-long meeting or anything like that. It can be pretty casual, it doesn't have to take up a lot of your time, but that itself can be reinforcing. Just like having someone holding you accountable or being there to kind of talk through any rough patches, or being like, that personal cheerleader, that can really keep a person going when they're learning a new skill too. And then celebrating that success. So the fun part of programming is the celebratory bit where reinforcers are earned. In meeting our clients where they're at and individualizing programs, we need that baseline data to see when they're needing, a pick me up to stay on track. So if someone's having issues every other day, let's check in and reinforce appropriate behaviors daily. And then we can thin that schedule to every other day, once they've shown consistency in their behavior, and then every 3 days, etc. Um, I've not really seen anyone celebrate meeting milestones necessarily, but I'm in my current role, I'm not always around for those milestones. We are a short-term service, so we're kind of in and out. So I think it's great, to have, once you finish this program, once you learn this skill, we're going to have a pizza party. We're going to go shopping. We're going to, use your skill of, handling your own money at the movie theater, and make a big deal out of it. It's exciting when someone learns a new skill, right? Like when I passed my exam, the whole office was amazing and I cried and I got a card and people got me cups that said BCBA, and it was a huge thing. It was a huge deal. I think that's really important for our folks too, like making things a big deal. Like, hey, we're really proud of you. You did it. Um, so just some different ideas. Something I did want to talk about too, in, when we do say that we're going to reinforce somebody, that's when we really want to buff up like communicating as a team with everyone, because I've definitely seen, reinforcement programs where they forgot to tell the staff that today they're earning a token, or they forgot to tell the staff that they get to go on an outing today. And then that person doesn't really trust the program anymore and they're not going to be motivated by it. So if you do have programs where, they're earning a reward, or you told them, hey, once you achieve this, we're going to go and do XYZ, we really want to stick to our words. So if we're going to stick to our words, we've got to communicate that with the whole team. We've got to have it on the calendar. We've got to make sure that, there's a plan in place for them to receive whatever they're getting. And then there's a backup plan, because if someone calls in sick, that's not fair to the person to not get what we promised them, right? So we need to figure out who's going to come in and help them get their reinforcement. So just something really important to kind of keep in mind when we do talk about a reinforcement program or celebrating success is that if we promise someone, we have to stick to our promises, because it's going to affect future programming too. Yes, simple comments or simple things make our people happy too. You are right. And I'm the same way. I don't need a ton of stuff, like just telling me like you're amazing. I'm like, oh, thank you. So yeah, like it says there, we talk about verbal praise, nonverbal acknowledgments, high fives, things like that. I think that's supposed to say clapping. I'm sorry, it says capping. But when we do, say that we're gonna reinforce something with a tangible or an activity or whatever, we have to really stick to those words. But yeah, so I think that might be it here. Oops. Here we go. So I wanted to, oh my goodness, thank all of you for participating in the training and congratulate you all on being done. Thank you all for everything that you do for the people we serve and pursuing further trainings to help support the population to your best ability. We appreciate you guys. This is just a song that I really love. It's very upbeat and there's colorful confetti in the video. I can play a little bit real quick for you guys, just to celebrate. Oh, and of course there's a commercial. But it is upbeat, so.
Pandora.
His debut solo album is called Head Up High, with the song Congratulations from Hollywood High School, right across the street from us, and help from Bryce Vine. Fitz.
Break out that old bottle of champagne, find a reason to celebrate right now. Roll out that red carpet, get up, babe. Walk it like you ain't never been knocked down. Yeah, 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 yeah. Rain on my parade, go ahead, throw me off my game. Holding that trophy above me.
For sake of time. Any question? Oop, it's not letting me. Any questions that you guys have?
There was, someone had asked about clarification on whether that client that ripped up or tore items, if they made art out of those ripped items, or if it was something that someone else used.
I think I want to say that they helped make, I want to say that they made like blankets and they did like some hand over hand. I think the artwork they like did some hand over hand with. There were some physical like disabilities for that specific person, but yeah, it was definitely assisted.
And then a question that was presented early on, I don't know if you actually touched on it or not, but someone was asking if you could provide any specific examples of interventions for individuals who are attention seeking.
So attention seeking, we really want to catch, I mean, it's case by case. So if you do have like a behavior therapist that knows the person or anything like that, or if you could seek, further assistance, but general interventions, you know, you want to catch the behavior before it's happening, right? So if you can provide that attention beforehand, or if you can work on, you know, any type of functional communication for the person to appropriately, you know, seek that attention before they, you know, engage in that like challenging behavior, that's something that you could do. It just kind of depends how often it's happening or kind of like what kind of attention or they're seeking, but yeah, I don't know if that helped.
And then the last one that I see here that just came through, Lindsay had just asked if you had an example of when it's more appropriate to use tally data recording versus ABC data recording.
So we actually have, and Danielle, you know this too, we have like an ABC data recording where you can actually use tallies. So if you wanted to combine the two, you could. But typically for ABC, that's when like we're still kind of looking at like trying to find the function of the behavior. So we want to know what's happening beforehand because there could be something triggering the behavior, or that's, you know, a precursor to, hey, like this might be the perfect time for me to get these things. And then looking at the consequence, what are they getting? Are they getting attention? Are they getting a tangible? Are they escaping something? So that's a lot of times when you're going to look at the ABC recording to kind of figure out, you know, function of the behavior. And then tally is really if you're trying to look at like the frequency typically of a behavior. So if you want to know how often someone is, you know, yelling or I don't know, hitting their head or something, you're going to use like those tally marks. But you can set up like I don't have it on my screen or anything, but if you want to use the tallies for ABC, you could say like a bunch of different antecedents and then a bunch of different behaviors and then a bunch of different consequences and then spaces for outliers, and just have the staff like tally in each column, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. That was all that I saw for questions. I think we both appreciate that everyone was very active in the chat box throughout, sharing their experiences. Because I don't see any more questions, I want to thank you, Tiffany, for all the valuable information that you provided to us today. You are able to receive continuing education certificates. As a reminder, an email will be sent to you within 24 hours with that post-exam. It is labeled as a survey link. Please fill out the one that comes to your email. Then your certificate will automatically be generated to you. Looks like, yeah, I'm not seeing anything else. But thank you so much, Tiffany. Thank you everyone for joining us today, the week before a holiday. I know it's hard, but we appreciate you. We appreciate all that you do. And we hope that everyone has a great holiday. Have a good rest of your day.